Okay, so let's start with a big question. What if everything you've ever been taught about money is, well, wrong? Today, we're diving into Rich Dad, Poor Dad, a book that really shook things up. It all starts with one single, powerful idea that just flips everything we think we know on its head. And this quote, this is pretty much the entire book in a nutshell. On one side, you have that classic idea you've probably heard a million times. The love of money is evil. But then on the other side, you've got this totally radical thought. No, the lack of money is the real problem. The author, Robert Kiyosaki, he grew up stuck right in the middle of these two ideas. And, well, that's where his whole philosophy really comes from. So who exactly were these two dads? Well, the story takes place in Hawaii. A young Robert Kiyosaki basically had two father figures in his life. One was his actual dad, and the other was his best friend's father. And this is the key part. They weren't just two guys with different jobs. They were like representatives of two completely different worlds, two totally different ways of living. And here's where it gets kind of crazy. The man he called Poor Dad, his real dad, was brilliant. I mean, he was the head of education for the state of Hawaii, had a PhD, the whole deal. Now, Rich Dad, he didn't even finish 8th grade. But, and this is the paradox, the super educated guy struggled with money his entire life. The 8th grade dropout, he became one of the richest men in Hawaii. So it just makes you wonder, right? What on earth did one of them know that the other one didn't? You know, this constant tug of war between these two mindsets, that was Kiyosaki's real education. Instead of just being told this is how the world works, he was forced to constantly compare, to question everything, and in the end, to choose his own path. It taught him to think about money in a way you don't learn in a classroom. Let me give you a classic example of what I'm talking about. His poor dad would always say, I can't afford it. And that was it. Conversation over. But Rich Dad, he absolutely forbade those words. Instead, he made him ask, how can I afford it? See the difference? One is a dead end. It just shuts your brain off. The other one, well, that's a question that kicks your brain into gear and forces it to start looking for answers. And this difference, man, it gets right to the heart of their two philosophies. Poor Dad's advice was always from an employee's point of view. Study hard, get a good, safe job. Rich Dad's advice was from an owner's point of view. Study hard so you can buy a good company. It's basically the difference between climbing the corporate ladder and owning the ladder itself. Okay, and what about risk? This was another huge difference between them. Poor Dad's whole thing was play it safe, don't take risks. But Rich Dad, he believed you had to learn how to manage risk. It wasn't something to avoid, it was something to understand. I love the analogy here. It's the difference between being afraid of the ocean and just staying on the beach versus learning how to surf. So, how did this whole financial education actually begin? It all started when Kiyosaki was just 9 years old. He got called a poor kid, and it really bothered him. So he goes to his dad, his poor dad, and asks him a really simple question. Dad, how do I get rich? And you know what? His dad had no idea. So his first attempt at getting rich was, well, let's just say it was creative. He and his buddy Mike started melting down old lead toothpaste tubes to try and make their own nickels. Yeah. When his dad found out, he had to gently explain that what they were doing was, counterfeiting, and that's illegal. So that business plan fell apart pretty quickly. But then, his dad gave him the best piece of advice he could. Son, if you really want to learn how to be rich, you need to go talk to Mike's dad. So they go to Rich Dad, and his response was not what they expected. There were no books, no lectures. His offer was super simple, super direct. He said, look, I'll teach you, but it's not going to be like school. You're going to work for me, and that's how you'll learn. The lesson was going to be real life. And what was the job? Get this. It was dusting canned goods in one of his little convenience stores. 3 hours, every single Saturday. And the pay? 10 cents an hour. Now, even back in the 1950s, that was basically nothing. We're talking a whole morning of boring work for maybe a couple of comic books. So after about a month of this, Kiyosaki was just done. He felt totally ripped off, like he was being taken advantage of. He marched right into Rich Dad's office, ready to quit, and just let him have it. Called him greedy, a crook, told him he hadn't learned a single thing. But here's the twist. This angry outburst was exactly what Rich Dad was waiting for. He just calmly looked at him and said he had been teaching him. All that frustration, the terrible pay, that feeling of being trapped, that was the lesson. The job was just the classroom. And then Rich Dad laid out his philosophy. He said, life is the greatest teacher. It doesn't give you lectures, it just pushes you around. He explained that some people just give up and let life push them forever. Other people get angry and they fight back. They push back against their boss or their job, but they don't realize they're fighting the wrong thing. But then there are a few people, and they're the ones who learn the lesson and move on. And that was the moment everything changed for Kiyosaki. The light bulb went on. He stopped blaming Rich Dad and he started asking the right kind of question. He realized it wasn't about getting a raise. It wasn't about finding a better job. He wanted to know, what's the real solution? Rich Dad's answer was so simple but so profound. He pointed to his head and said, the solution is this stuff between your ears. It's not about changing your boss or your paycheck. The real solution is inside you. It's about changing the way you think, using your brain to figure out your money problems, not just your body to work harder. And that whole experience, that whole revelation, it all leads to lesson number one, the big one, the core idea of the whole Rich Dad philosophy. And it's a statement that is designed to pretty much break everything you've ever been taught about making a living. So what does that even mean, the rich don't work for money? Well, think about it. Most people, the poor and the middle class, they work for money. You trade your hours for dollars. If you stop working, the money stops coming in. Simple, right? But the rich, they have their money work for them. This means they build or buy things, we call them assets, like businesses or real estate or stocks, that generate income on their own. The money flows in whether they're physically working or not. It's all about separating your time from your income. And this idea, this is the secret to getting out of what Rich Dad famously called the rat race. You know what that is, right? That endless loop of get up, go to work, pay bills, run out of money, and then get up and do it all over again. This is how you get off that hamster wheel for good. Now, Rich Dad said that the thing that keeps most people stuck in that rat race isn't a lack of intelligence, it's emotion. Specifically, it's fear. The fear of not being able to pay your bills, the fear of being fired, the fear of just not having enough. That fear is what pushes people to cling to the idea of a safe, secure job, and it's what makes them ultimately slaves to a paycheck. So, to really hammer this lesson home, Rich Dad came back with an even crazier offer. He told the boys, okay, I want you to keep working for me, but this time I'm going to pay you nothing, zero. Why on earth would he do that? Well, as long as they were thinking about that 10 cents an hour, their brain was still stuck in work for money mode. By taking the paycheck away completely, he forced them to stop thinking like an employee and start opening their eyes to see opportunities to create money that were all around them. And really, that's what this is all about. It's about seeing that there isn't just one path. It's not just about getting a job and working for a paycheck. There's another way, a different path to financial freedom. And this lesson was the very first step on that journey. So let's end with the exact same question that Rich Dad put to a little 9-year-old boy all those years ago. It's a question that really gets to the heart of everything. I want you to think about your own life, how you make a living, and just ask yourself honestly, are you working for money, or is your money working for you?